Hello, and welcome to Life After the Family Home. Smart conversations about downsizing and planning the next chapter. Today's conversation is about something many homeowners feel, but do not always say out loud. How do you let go of the family home emotionally? Because for many people, downsizing is not only about square footage. It is not only about maintenance. It is not only about simplifying. It is about leaving a place that has held years, sometimes decades, of life. A place where birthdays were celebrated, holidays were hosted, children were raised, milestones were reached, losses were felt, and routines became part of daily life for so long, they almost disappeared into the background. In fact, one of the most important things to understand is this. If letting go feels emotional, that does not mean it is the wrong decision. It simply means the home mattered. That is an important distinction. Because sometimes people start judging themselves for having feelings about the move. They think, if I know this is the right step, why am I struggling with it? The answer is simple. Because logic and emotion do not move at the same speed. You can know something makes sense and still need time to feel your way into it. Both things can be true. You can be ready for less maintenance and still feel sadness about leaving. You can want a simpler home and still feel emotional walking through rooms filled with memories. You can be looking forward to the next chapter and still grieve what is ending. That is not confusion. That is transition. And transition is rarely as neat as people think. One reason this feels so personal is that a long-time home often becomes part of identity. Not just where someone lives, but how they think of themselves. The person who hosted family dinners. The person with the big kitchen. The home with a room for everyone at the holidays. The familiar place adult children still think of as home. These roles are powerful. So when the idea of selling comes up, it can stir something deeper than real estate. It can raise questions like, who am I without this house? What happens to family traditions? Will things feel the same? Will people still gather? What am I really leaving behind? Those are real questions, and it helps to name them. Because when those feelings stay unspoken, they often turn into resistance. Not resistance to the move itself, but resistance to what the move seems to represent. That is why emotional clarity matters just as much as practical planning. Another thing that helps is recognizing that the meaning of a home does not disappear when ownership changes. That may sound obvious, but it is easy to forget. The memories are not in danger. The years lived, they are not erased. The family story does not vanish because the property changes hands. A home can stop being yours without stopping mattering. That is an important shift. Because sometimes people feel like moving means losing the chapter completely, but that is not really what happens. The chapter stays. What changes is where the next chapter begins. And that can be hard, but it can also be healthy. For many homeowners, the emotional difficulty is not actually about the house itself. It is about what the house has been holding. Routines, roles, history, comfort, certainty. When life has changed around you over time, the home often becomes the one piece that still feels constant. So letting go of it can feel like letting go of stability. That is why the process deserves patience. Not endless delay, but patience. Because emotional decisions usually go better when they are acknowledged instead of pushed aside. One useful way to think about this is to separate the home from the life that happened there. The life that happened there is yours. It stays with you. The love stays. The memories stay. The family stories stay. The meaning stays. The house was the setting. An important setting, yes, but still the setting. And when you start to see it that way, it becomes a little easier to understand that moving does not mean abandoning your history. It means carrying your history forward into a home that may fit the next stage of life more comfortably. That brings up another important point. Sometimes the family home is being asked to do a job it no longer does well. Maybe it once fit a busy household perfectly. Maybe it once made sense to have extra bedrooms, a large yard, multiple levels, a lot of storage, and space for everyone. But life changes. Children grow up. Routines change. Priorities change. Energy changes. Needs change. And a home that once supported life beautifully can eventually begin asking more than it gives back. More maintenance. More cleaning. More repairs. More expense. More physical effort. More unused space. That does not make the home bad. It just means the fit may be changing. And that is an important emotional shift too. Sometimes letting go gets easier when the conversation changes from I'm leaving something I love to I'm choosing something that supports me better now. That is not the same thing. It is not a loss-only conversation. It is a quality of life conversation. Less upkeep, less stress, less responsibility. More ease, more freedom. More alignment with the way you want to live now. That is a very different emotional frame. And often a much healthier one. Now, this does not mean every moment of the process will feel easy. Some days may feel surprisingly emotional. A room may hit differently than expected. A closet may bring up old memories. A holiday decoration may stop you in your tracks. A mark on a wall may remind you of a child growing up. A chair may remind you of someone who is no longer here. This is part of it. And one of the best things you can do is not fight every emotional moment as though it is a problem. Sometimes it is okay to pause, to feel it, to acknowledge it, to let that moment be real. Not everything has to be turned into productivity. Sometimes the most productive thing is simply to recognize that this mattered. Then, keep going. Because the goal is not to become emotionless, the goal is to move forward with honesty. Another thing that can help is creating intentional ways to preserve what matters most. That may mean taking photographs of meaningful spaces before leaving. It may mean keeping a small collection of items that truly represent the home and the life lived there. It may mean passing certain pieces to family. It may mean writing down stories connected to certain rooms, traditions, or milestones. Those kinds of actions can be surprisingly helpful. Why? Because they remind you that memory can be preserved without keeping an entire house. You do not need to keep every object to keep the meaning. You do not need to stay in the house forever to honor what it gave you. Another important part of letting go emotionally is giving yourself permission to imagine something positive on the other side. This matters more than people realize. If all the emotional attention stays focused on what's ending, then of course the move will feel heavy. But if you also allow yourself to picture what may improve, the emotional balance changes. A simpler daily routine, a home that is easier to clean, fewer repairs, less worry about stairs, yard work, or unused rooms, more flexibility, more time for family, travel, hobbies, or just breathing a little easier. That vision matters. Because you're not only closing one chapter, you are opening another. And that next chapter deserves some emotional space too. Sometimes homeowners unintentionally make the transition harder by assuming they need to feel one clear thing, either certainty or sadness, relief or grief, excitement or regret. But most real transitions do not work that way. Often, people feel several things at once: relief and sadness, confidence and hesitation, gratitude and grief. That is normal. You do not need to sort every emotion perfectly before moving forward. You just need enough clarity to know what direction makes sense. And sometimes that clarity grows while the process is already happening. This is also why support matters. Not pressure. Not people telling you how you should feel. But support. A family member who listens. A trusted advisor who understands both the practical and emotional sides. A conversation that helps you feel grounded instead of rushed. Because this kind of move is not just logistical, it is personal. And people usually handle personal transitions better when they do not feel like they have to do it all emotionally alone. In the end, letting go of the family home emotionally is usually not about getting over it. It is about understanding it. Understanding why the home matters. Understanding what it represented. Understanding what is changing. And understanding that moving forward does not erase what came before. The goal is not to stop caring. The goal is to care and still move forward, when forward is the right direction. So if this is where you are right now, if part of you knows a move may make sense, but another part of you still feels tied to the home, here is the takeaway. Be patient with yourself. Do not confuse emotion with a mistake. Do not assume that sadness means stop. And do not forget that the meaning of the home comes with you, even when the house does not. Because the house may have held a beautiful chapter, but it is not the only place your life can continue beautifully. Thank you for joining this conversation on life after the family home. Smart conversations about downsizing and planning the next chapter. For more guidance, connect with Skip Benton with Coldwell Banker Select Real Estate in Northern Nevada